Okay, the new Starfield launch announcement gave us a fresh look at some updated gameplay and specifically showed us new animations, better shooting mechanics, some new locations, and a good look at the inventory system. We're going to break down the second half of this video where we see all of these new elements and more. And yes, we are using AI upscaled 8K footage for the analysis, so strap in and let's take a look at the Starfield launch announcement breakdown in 8K. Welcome everyone, this is Starfield Signal, your place for everything Starfield. I am your host, Luke, and I am with you. I am so excited that Bethesda finally came out of their hibernation and gave us an update and some blurry gameplay footage to pick apart. Thanks, Todd. Before we get into the breakdown, a few caveats. I'm not going to comment on really anything Todd says, not that it's not important, but it's all just pretty straightforward. We're going to focus solely on the gameplay footage we can see in the background on the TV and on the developer's monitors. For the background TV footage, even though I'm using 8K footage to zoom in here for a better look, it is unfortunately still going to be blurry. This is largely due to how screens just usually don't look great on camera, and there is a little bit of background blur over the TV due to the depth of field caused by the camera's lens. But even with all of that in the way, there are still some interesting details to pull from the footage, and the 8K still gives us a better image to work with than the native 4K. Also, I'm going to change up the order of these shots just a bit so we can keep all of the combat gameplay together, then we'll take a look at the inventory screen and then end on the different locations we can see. So, let's get started. The first footage we see on the TV is most likely our player on the planet Mars. Of course, we have the red dirt that gives us a hint, but there's another big clue a little bit later in the video. As the player turns around, we see what many believe to be our first ship in the game, the Frontier, along with the first human companion we've seen in gameplay. The image unfortunately isn't clear enough to get any kind of indication as to who this might be, but we do just see one companion, and it's still unclear if we'll be able to have more than one active companion at a time. Continuing through the footage, the player turns around and switches to third-person view, and this is the first thing that really caught my eye. We see some improved movement animations, especially with the fluid 60 frames per second that we can now clearly see. This may seem like a really small thing, but this was one of the biggest concerns coming out of last year's gameplay reveal. So this was really smart of them to give just a few small glimpses of this improvement. We can also briefly see that we have the ability to zoom our camera out a little farther from our character. These little touches are always great to give the player more freedom. I also want to note here that your O2 and CO2 levels act as your stamina meter. This was present in the original gameplay from last year, but I personally haven't talked about this yet. I mainly just wanted to take an extra second to comment on how cool this is to use as a gameplay mechanic. Very clever. Some people have pointed out here that the crosshairs on the display are pink, indicating the potential to customize our player's interface to some extent. This very well could be true, as Bethesda have allowed interface customization before. However, this could also be simple color fringing or the way the TV's colors are rendered in the camera. Another quick note on the crosshairs, we do see them dynamically grow larger and smaller as the player goes in and out of a sprint, indicating improved shooting accuracy when the character is not sprinting. Next, we see the player start to loot some containers, and this brings up a dialogue window to show what items are inside. As the player brings these into his inventory, a notification pops up on the left side of the screen. It's too blurry to tell exactly what it is, but it seems to be some sort of progress bar, maybe somehow connected to the skill leveling system they talked about last year. It could also be something connected to your inventory management, maybe updating you on your capacity or even tracking how many items you have for a side quest. This next section is where we see a little bit of combat and the updated shooting mechanics. The first thing I want to note is about the jetpack. This was another minor point of concern in last year's gameplay. The jetpack mechanic didn't look great and seemed like it wasn't very fluid or responsive. Though we just get a split second of the updated jetpack on this blurry screen, it seems that they've already improved this to be more natural, more fluid, and definitely more responsive. After a second of getting into this area, we get a notification we've arrived to the Mars Mech Factory, confirming our suspicions earlier that we were on Mars. Calling back to the Constellation Questions video with Will Shen from last year, he said that the player would travel to Mars and get in contact with the question of what happened to Earth. This could be the same quest he was referring to. Also, the Mech Factory location is interesting. I know that Vasco is a Constellation robot, but it's possible we could be on a rescue mission to find him, or even some sort of extraction mission to bring an upgrade back for Vasco. Let me know in the comments what your theories are regarding the mission to Mars. As the player navigates through what seems to be a very large open battleground area, they aim down their sights to take a few shots. These few shots seem to improve the recoil animations from the first gameplay. Though this is a different gun and all of them will surely have different recoils, this one feels a bit more natural. A quick aside, I noticed this in the original gameplay as well, but the XP notification is still in the very middle of the screen. This is possibly the worst place for it because it's always going to be a distraction and block your view. This is a great example of how it comes up and completely blocks where you're aiming. This should be a super simple fix. Bethesda, if you're watching, move this thing somewhere else. Top, bottom, side, I don't care, I can get used to it anywhere else. Just don't distract us with it in the middle of the screen. Okay, rant over. In a few more seconds, we see a grenade explode. When this happens, we not only see the explosion, but we also get an additional visual cue through a flash over our screen. I would imagine they've also probably built in some controller feedback into this mechanic as well, to make these explosions feel heavy, big, and dangerous. We see the player sprinting across the battlefield, bringing up his weapon quick swap menu. We notice here almost all of his slots are full of weapons as opposed to last year's look at this menu, which just had a few. Again, it's too blurry to really make out much detail here, but we can kind of make out the difference between handguns, rifles, and maybe larger weapons, but the player chooses to switch to what looks to be a submachine gun. The last clip from this little section of gameplay doesn't have much going on, but we do see a new weapon. This looks to be a heavy handgun. It might be a revolver, it's hard to tell, but I think you can see a revolving chamber in the middle of the gun. It's also super hard to tell because Todd's shoulder is in the way, but I think the character is holding the handle with a double grip, alluding to the power and recoil this gun potentially has. As we get to the end of this skirmish, I just want to note the large area this battle seemed to take place in. I think this is a great use of space now that Bethesda is focusing more on gun combat. It really felt like people were shooting at you from all across the map, giving a greater sense of immersion and danger. The last little glimpse of combat we see here is this alien creature attacking us. A few pieces of info that we get here. This is a level 75 hunting maggot maw. It definitely freaks out the player because he panics and throws a grenade right over it. But backing up a little bit, we get a good look at this gun. Though we've briefly seen this before, it now has these really cool laser sights on it. I'm assuming this is some sort of shotgun indicated by the multiple chambers and the laser sights. Definitely the right choice for a close-up encounter. Going back to the creature being level 75, we can assume this level is also possible for our character. And while I don't think we've seen a level cap just yet, with this info we can safely assume level 75 is attainable. Lastly on the screen, look over to the left and you'll see what seems to be parts of a nest. This makes me think this huge maggot maw has a lot of little brothers and sisters just waiting to come out and party. And to be honest, I really hate little creatures like this that just come out of nowhere and mob you. If you're with me, hit that like button and have your flamethrower ready. This is one of my favorite shots we can pull from the screens. Maybe because it's so clear and easy to read, but I think this interface looks really good and really clean. Lots of familiar features down on the bottom, options to drop, favorite, or sort all of your gear, and we also have the option to hide our helmet in third-person mode whenever we are in a breathable area. This is a simple but an appreciated option, as I'm sure a lot of us are going to spend quite a bit of time with the character creator, and we'll want to see our character's face as much as possible. Here on the left side of the screen, we have all of our different helmets to choose from. Next to each helmet, we have a damage resistance value, abbreviated as DR. And we see this confirmed again as we look over to the right stats window. I'm not going to read all of these helmets, but there's pretty much everything here from all of the different factions. Let's hang out here on the Space Trucker helmet. We see the damage resistance value of 22 mirrored in the physical rating of 22 in the stats window. Then we can also see it has an ENGY rating of I think 30, and I'm going to safely assume that stands for energy. The next is an EM rating of 26. And I think I've seen some people say EM stands for electromagnetism. The oscillating waveforms support this theory as well, so this sounds good enough for me. We also have different ratings for thermal, airborne, corrosive, and radiation damage. All of these are particularly interesting for me because they allude to natural environmental hazards that we'll have to consider. This means there will most likely be planets with extreme heat and cold, planets with poisonous gas and corrosive material to navigate through, maybe getting a little bit of inspiration from Dark Souls' poison swamps here. And of course, we have the mass and value of the helmet. I feel like a lot of other people have noted this, but just so you hear it from me as well, Starfield will use mass instead of weight, because mass is constant no matter what gravity you're affected by at the moment, and weight changes with different gravity values. The last thing I want to comment on for this screen is just how cool this gear looks. I'll be honest, I couldn't define for you exactly what NASA Punk means, but I have a feeling this kind of style carries the idea. It just kind of seems like this outfit wasn't manufactured as a whole, but it was engineered out of necessity. It's not made to look good, but made for function. With all of these hoses strapped down, looks like there's some tape around it at some point, and then the carabiner strapped to the front, I feel like this guy is just out in the wild, just making it work, strapping together whatever he can find just to survive, and that's really neat. Okay, moving on to the different location shots we see. This first one really took my breath away. First of all, the gear on our character looks really cool. It's not the typical white NASA-inspired spacesuit we've seen so far. And then the beautiful colors of this lush area with the green grass and plants complementing the orange leaves at the top of the trees. Then we have these amazing creatures that again give off this space dinosaur vibe. As they run around, we can tell they have horns on the top of their heads and some sort of hardened shell on the end of their tail. Though I assume by their long necks they're herbivores, feeding on the orange leaves at the top of the trees, they still look like they could do some damage if you picked a fight with one. I want to go back to our character real quick. Beneath his back tank, we see something else on his waist. This looks to be some sort of battery, and it's connected by wires that travel down to the side of his leg to some sort of pouch. I don't think this is a holster for a weapon, but all of these dots lining the character's lower suit make me think that the battery could be providing power to the suit for some sort of special feature or ability. This could be faster sprinting or even improved jump strength to reach higher places without a jetpack. I'm not quite sure, but it looked interesting enough to point it out. Let me know in the comments if you have any theories on what this might be. For the second location, we see another beautiful location where everything is color coordinated with our spacesuit. The white and gold of our spacesuit matches almost perfectly with the wind turbines, and the white and orangish red flora complement these quite nicely. Here we also get another look at the revolver pistol. We see it in the character's hands as he approaches the wind turbines, and we can also see the revolver icon in the bottom right corner of the screen. Finally, we get a really neat look at this area with rock formations and even a natural bridge that goes across this ravine. I love the verticality this alludes to, giving the player options for how to traverse through different parts of the map. Maybe you'll be approaching an enemy outpost and you can sneak up close to the ground, or you can go around the top of the cliffs to find a better position to snipe from. This shot definitely piques my imagination. Out of all of these shots we've covered, let me know which one you found most interesting. Do these confirm or debunk any of your existing theories? We have a lot more Starfield content planned. If you don't want to miss it, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button if you had a good time, and thank you for watching. For now, may you find wonder as you journey through the stars.